A lot of things happened in 1989, but I've got something else here that happened in 1989 you might not remember. Let's talk about it. I'm DMS, you're watching The Headphone Show, and if you own a headphone that looks like this, you either like indie rock, vaporwave, or anime music. You gotta pick one of those three paths. I don't make the rules. This is the Sony CD900ST, a headphone, as you can see on the side, for digital. Now, Sony released a 4-digital CD900 in the early 80s, but the ST is what we're talking about today. The reason this says for digital on the side, and the reason it says CD is, you guessed it, this headphone was made for CDs, a headphone designed for the wide bandwidth CDs could reproduce. And these are actually still in production and still used today in Japan in recording studios. Now, they come with much thinner pads, and there's a reason for that. They're designed to be as close on your ear as possible to help with sound localization, but I prefer them with these. The Yaxi ST2 pad. Nice colored left and right markings, and they give it a bit more of a balanced frequency response. For context, that's how I'm going to be talking about these today, but if I talk about them with the stock pads, I'll mention it. Headphones like this are timeless. They're known to last for a long time. I mean, you've probably seen this headband and cup assembly a million times over the years through the MDR V6, the 7506, the M1ST, and many more. But the CD900ST, well, it stands out among those. It's truly something special. Something else to note, I also removed the stock cable on this and shortened it. This is how much excess I took off. And while it's cool it came with a 6.3mm connection, I mostly use this when video editing and don't need that long of a cable or a 6.3. And speaking of, that's what I use this for, video editing. Most of the time when I'm sitting at my computer working on a project, creating videos like these for you, in fact this video specifically too, will probably be edited with these headphones on. It just makes sense. They are lightweight, comfortable, they're probably going to last forever, and let's be honest, they kind of have a nice classic look. The reason I'm talking about these today is because, in a sense, they're still relevant as a reference headphone. They're not perfect. I'd be shocked if Sony had made the perfect headphone in 1989. That would be kind of awesome. But what they are is still shockingly relevant. Yeah, there's a few things that haven't caught up to modern standards. Modern headphones usually have a bit more padding on top, and this doesn't have a removable cable. But what it does have is a pretty wide range of motion. They swivel, they tilt, they twist. But more important than any of that is the sound. These were, again, always designed as a reference headphone, and that's what I use them as. The frequency response has a couple of faults in it, nothing actually that crazy, and they're pretty adherent for the most part. We'll talk about that in a little bit. What they do really well is honesty. It's a headphone that's simple, a headphone that I enjoy for what it is. Much like the Koss KPH-30Is, the Porta Pros. It's a reference headphone that'll keep you honest. I don't feel like I'm missing out on things like detail or separation, but it's also not an experience that distracts me and blows me away every time I listen to it. I feel like I get a very consistent experience across all of the music in my library, whether it was recorded 40 years ago or whether it came out this year. Everything gets the same treatment. Nothing seems to be leaps and bounds ahead, and nothing seems to be too far behind. And maybe that is a limitation of detail, but nothing particularly sounds bad, and there's still things I've heard in this headphone I haven't heard in others. It's just all across the board a very honest and clear headphone that doesn't play too much. And what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of times when I'm working, there are headphones that can distract me. They send me down a path that is very enjoyable, but often leads to a lapse in my productivity. Which isn't to say the CD900ST is unenjoyable, because I do listen to it very often when I'm not working. But it's also a headphone that puts the music in a very clear space. It's presenting it to you, but it's not trying to envelop and overwhelm you. It's not the kind of headphone that you're going to put on and be completely engulfed and surrounded by music. But it does all that without putting on a grand show. And I think it's an honest headphone for that exact reason. It's not trying to wow you, it's just being honest. The CD900ST is comfort food in the shape of a headphone. It's something that's very easy to live with, something I can put on every day when I'm working or when I just need a closed back to cut out some extra noise, but I really don't want to commit to the full top-level audiophile experience with my amp and DAC and really having to be involved and deep in the music. It's like the Toyota you can drive to work every day. It's dependable, it's reliable, it gets you there, it has good fuel economy, you like the seats, and you like the CD player. Yeah, some other guy might have a Ferrari, but do you know how hard it is to climb in and out of that thing? You know how much the insurance costs and the tires cost? At the end of the day, it's a lot easier to daily drive that Toyota. So things like soundstage, things like imaging, all of that, well, they're unexceptional, but they're good. The stage isn't super immersive, but it's also not dead on inside your head. It is in no means wide. The imaging is pretty solid. You can tell where things are coming from. It's a lot better with the stock pads. These are designed again for sound localization specifically. So if a microphone is, 20 inches in front of you, you should be able to hear that it's 20 inches in front of you. And a pad change, while improving the frequency response, does sacrifice a bit of that sound localization. It's still pretty good. For me personally, a pad change was necessary, if anything, for the comfort. And timbre is decent. It's not life-changing, but it's pretty good. You can tell there's an area of the treble that recesses a little bit. It's a lot like the dip you get on Headphones or like on the HD800S. And parts of the treble, specifically around 3K, have a little bit of sizzle to it. It's not what I would describe as bright, but it's also not what I would describe as smooth. Again, it's just honest. It sits right there in the middle. If your track is going to bite, this is going to bite. If your track is really smooth, this is going to be really smooth. And again, I feel like I get that consistent performance across pretty much everything. It's just going to conform to the music, and it'll, again, be honest. So let's talk about frequency response. Here's what we've got. So as you can see, the bass does roll off. That's mostly because I couldn't get this to seal well on that measurement rig, but even on my head, there is a bit of roll off. It produces sub bass, but it's not super deep, punchy, and powerful. I'd say it's more present on my head than it is on the measurement rig, but this is not a bass monster by any means. The low mid-range and the mids are pretty consistent and linear. This is probably why it has decent timbre, and then we get that recess between like 1.5 and 2 kilohertz. That goes down, and then the peak of our ear gain is right there around 3K. Now that 3K, it's no joke, but also this is something that's pretty common. We see a similar bump on 3K with the MM100, with the MM500, with a lot of good modern headphones. And from there on out, the treble goes up and down a little bit, but nothing too dramatic. Until we pass over like 16K, then it drops off like a stone on the Brüel & Kjær 4128. It might be different on the 5128, but we haven't measured it on that rig yet. All things considered, a headphone from 1989 with just a pad swap, that's pretty good frequency response. In fact, that's a lot better than any closed back Beyerdynamic has ever made. It's kind of better than a lot of Beyerdynamic's open backs too. That's better than the current generation Beyer T1. Kind of funny, right? So what's the takeaway here? Is it that headphones just aren't getting any better? Did Sony absolutely strike gold? Well, it's a mix of things. Headphones have gotten a lot better in recent years, but that doesn't mean that certain gems weren't made along the way. The CD900ST, it's one of those old gems. Like the 7506, this has been around for a long time for a reason. Same with the HD600 and the 650. It's not one of the most popular headphones out there, but if you say CD900ST, a lot of people say, oh, with the Yaxi pads? It's known for a reason. And today I wanted to shine a spotlight on this old gem of a headphone, one that has been in my collection and will stay in my collection. One that gets a lot of mileage, and if I had to sell everything today, this would be one of the things that I keep. Let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Is there an old headphone that you love? Do you think headphones have gotten a lot better, or maybe in some ways worse? Funny, you could say they don't make things like they used to, but they literally make these like they used to. They've been making these since 1989. Some things never change, and sometimes that's a good thing. Anyway, let's wrap up this video, guys. If you liked it, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can at the forums or Discord, both available at the link in the video description. As always, don't forget to stick around, subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Till next one, guys. Peace.